It was just a Model 12 security droid, with a sloped helmet for a head and a heavily armored humanoid body and limbs. There was a smudged, worn mark made with silver Sharpie on its helmet. Scanning the mark, I could reconstruct it digitally using my base station. As the slim device whirred from across the room, I continued inspecting the fire-damaged security droid. Even now, staring at it, knowing by touch it was metal, I couldn't shake that feeling. That I wasn't just gazing upon broken machinery, but a corpse of something so foreign yet familiar that it drew me in like a moth to the flame. I could scarcely believe the story that came with the unit, not the structure fire part. That part was evident by the soot-covered armor and melted buffer material leaking from the cracks. No, what was hard to believe was that the machine had stormed back into the burning hospital ward against its orders and programming. My base station beeped, drawing my attention. Slithering over, I pulled up a holographic screen displaying the reconstructed Sharpie mark. It wasn't a manufacturer code, or mark like I had suspected. No, the handwriting was much too ragged for that. Besides that, I didn't know any one-word marks a droid like this would have from the manufacturer. I quietly read the word under my breath after recognizing the language. Alice. Slowly turning back around to face the droid, I shook my head softly. Looking at it there, hung from its bay by the shoulders like a quartered grox at a butcher shop. It didn't feel right. Something wasn't adding up here. Placing a call to the owner of the droid, I let it ring while I dragged an anti-grav work table from a stack placed against the wall and over to the security droid. Hoisting it up, I'd carefully lower it flat onto the flat top of the workbench, burnt-out servo joints offering no resistance. The phone kept ringing throughout the entire process until at last the droid's owner picked up.
What do you want?
Hi, this is Kervoot with the IGRP Droid Division. I'm calling about this Model 12 Phalanx droid you sent in. Could you give me any more details on how it got destroyed? I could hear the sounds of debauchery in the background for a moment before the owner shouted back. It was stationed at one of my old care facilities. Some angry resident burnt the place to the ground and that stupid fusking machine ran right back in after it was ordered not to. Kept telling the company it must have been defective, but did they listen? No. It even started acting like a serving droid before a lat. If you ask me, it should be scrapped. Serving droid? I asked with relentless curiosity. I knew I wasn't being told something.
Yeah, kept bringing number 8 her food trays when it should have been guarding the kitchens and staff area. I need to go.
The line went dead as alarm bells screamed in my head. My gaze returned to the droid, lying on the table as though resting. There was only one person left to ask. It took almost 10 minutes to get the latch unseized, but once I stuck the key in and provided a little supplementary power, the droid's faceplate slowly whined open. In my heart, there was such a deep feeling of sorrow as I gazed upon the shielded drives inside.
I'm sorry, I have to know.
I found myself whispering as I extracted the main drive. Why did I do that? Holding the solid lump of gold and carbon matrices like a newborn, I carried it to my base station before plugging it into the reader. Several seconds passed as the data was decrypted, recovered, and then translated so I could read it. I immediately began scrolling through the many file folders stored within. Starting with employee directories, then the duties list. There. I spotted the anomaly almost immediately. Between the tasks labeled Ensure Kitchen is Locked and Patrol Southern Hallways was a task labeled simply Bring Janet her tea. My brain stuttered. Such a simply worded task was the hallmark of security droid programming, considering they needed some sort of agency and creativity when dealing with threats. I scanned through the remaining scheduled tasks going back as far as the uncorrupted data would allow. Going back almost 2 years, that same task repeated itself in varying places. Bring Janet her tea. Who was Janet, and why was the security droid bringing her tea? Upper management, perhaps? Flickering back to the employee registry, I didn't see anyone named Janet. Clicking out of the folder, I mindlessly scrolled through the rest, stumped trying to figure out what happened. Then I noticed the second anomaly. The memory folder had been renamed to Memories. I opened it without hesitation and was greeted not by the usual text log, but by a series of videos. Scrolling to the earliest one, I let it play.
Oh, Alice, you're such a dear. Know how to make a kicking cuppa too.
the old woman exclaimed as a pair of hardy mechanical hands set a delicate ceramic teacup and saucer onto a bed tray. The woman's frail hands shook as she brought the cup to her lips and took a sip of the warm brown liquid inside. "Brewed at 95 degrees, then cooled to 43, as you prefer, ma'am." I almost leaped out of my chair at the sound of the droid's voice. A collection of electronic tones smashed together to form words in their most basic essence, played not from a speaker but the various electronics inside the droid's armored carapace. I continued watching, unable to believe my eyes. "Oh, you remembered. You know my memory isn't what it used to be. Has my grandson visited Alice? I do miss him so very much." There was a moment of hesitation on the droid's part. "Your grandson died on Hecate 4 holding off a Carnid assault. He was a hero, ma'am." The woman looked down at her tea, a lone tear falling into the liquid. "I had forgotten. Such a brave young man. Will I ever get better? Alice, will I ever be able to remember my grandson's face again? There are times where I think I do, but then it's just gone." The heartbreak in her voice was enough to drive a knife into my own. "I do not know, ma'am. I can acquire his service portrait if it would help you." Looking up, the old woman, Janet, sniffled softly and wiped her eyes with a tissue before downing her tea like it was liquor. "I would appreciate that, Alice. Thank you. I'm finished with my tea. You should take the cup and saucer back so they don't get you in trouble." "Yes, ma'am." As the droid took the set from the old woman and turned, I saw the large brass number 8 on the front of the open door. My blood ran cold as I began to put things together. A structure fire at a care facility, a rogue droid, and resident number 8, Janet. I spent the next several hours watching every one of the videos, most no longer than a minute, the longest no more than 5. I watched, in what felt like real time, as Janet slowly succumbed to her illness, steadied only by the droid she knew as Alice. The last recorded video, however, was almost 10 minutes long, the thumbnail showing a room engulfed in flames. Unlike the others, this one was titled, "Bring to Justice." With a heavy heart, I hit play. The first 7 minutes were little more than smoke and fire as the droid swiftly sprinted through the burning building. Then the droid reached the door with the brass number 8 on it, grabbing the knob urgently, only to find it locked from the outside. This did not stop almost a ton of titanium plating and circuitry from punching it open. The room inside was already filled with smoke, but the droid quickly spotted who they were looking for. Janet was huddled against the wall, tears silently leaking from her eyes. Kneeling in front of her, the droid stated, "We must go." "No," was Janet's immediate reply, revealing that she was hugging the wood-framed photo of her grandson in his dress blues to her chest. "I remember him now, Alice. He always said he'd keep an eye on me, even if he wasn't around, and I think that was you. You were the only one who was ever nice to me here, Alice. You even came back. But please go. I don't want you to die here for some crotchety old woman. Let me die owning my mind." As she reached up to wipe her tears away yet again, I realized with a sudden shock that the purple and yellow marks on her wrinkled skin were not natural patterning, but instead vicious bruising. My heart slammed against my ribcage as Alice sat next to Janet, bringing the old woman's head to their chest gently and letting her cry. Not alone. There was a loud crashing noise and the video ended abruptly, leaving me to stare at the holoscreen in disbelief. Shock turned to grief. Grief turned to rage. Looking over at the metal body laid to rest on that cold, hovering slab, I felt disgusted. There was far more to this story than I could hope to uncover. Looking up at the sticky note on the wall behind my base station, I grabbed the phone and dialed the number. The first ring didn't even get a chance to finish. "This is Detective Clevens with the NDPD. How may I help?" It only took me a short time to relay what I had found before the old avian detective was on his way. Sitting in a chair to wait, it suddenly felt as though the room let out a relieved sigh, and looking at Alice's metal body, it suddenly felt just like looking at another machine. I felt a sad curl on my lips as I looked up at the ceiling. "Rest in peace, Alice. We'll take it from here."